All right, welcome back to the Grand Solar Minimum channel. Today is Monday, September 6th, 2021. I want to thank everyone for tuning in tonight for this Grand Solar Minimum news update. Sorry for the week-long absence, but we are in the final stages of our project and our home is just about complete and ready to move into. So there's been some long days that we've had already and a long few more days, a couple more weeks of this, and hopefully we will be in our new GSM studio as well. All right, let's get right into our space weather update. Right now, our solar wind speeds are coming in at 296.6 kilometers per second, a density of 12.1. Solar wind speeds have remained quite low over the past several days. And what's really striking is that we've seen so much activity. We have so much activity. Sunspot 2864, very impressive sunspot active region there. And then we have 2866 and 2868, which are in the southern part of our star, that are just coming to Earth face. And then to the right of your screen, just past Earth facing, the center of it, there's another decent sized sunspot, AR2863. Believe it or not, though, the total sunspot numbers on these four active regions is 66. And we have seen higher, is what I'm saying. We have seen much higher. It says that AR2864, AR2866, and AR2868 have all grown in the past 24 hours, but remain mostly quiet. Nothing yet. And interesting, too, possible Earth-directed explosion yesterday, September 5th, decaying sunspot AR2865, which is no longer here, produced a B7 class solar flare. The explosion sent a shadowy shockwave rippling through the sun's lower atmosphere and may have hurled a faint CME towards Earth. Estimated time of arrival is between September 8th through the 9th. Stay tuned for updates about this potentially geoeffective event. And I have to believe that this would be something like minor G1 storm, or maybe just an uptick in KP briefly, causing a quick storm here. So this was Earth directed, but not a direct hit as well. But right now, no threats at all for any solar flares or anything of that nature. Cosmic radiation dosage rates remain high, 9.1%, folks. That is near where we were during the bottom of the minimum. So still experiencing an abundance of cosmic radiation, highly charged particles, just flooding our atmosphere. And, people wonder why we're having these once in a thousand year storms. You've heard it so many times over the past 4 years. And I love how some mainstream media outlets will say, well, it's climate change. And, these once in a thousand year storms, that's why it's happening, because of man-made. Well, wait a minute. You just said this happened before 1,000 years ago. Did man cause that particular event? Was man's actions responsible for this once in a thousand year storm 1,000 years ago, or maybe 1,000 years before that? See, they don't hear themselves. They just spew out garbage, and a lot of people are just brainwashed and absorb this. But here at this channel, we like to point out the obvious that the mainstream media tries to point out that's not relevant. And we also like to point out the facts and the education of solar cycles and how the sun impacts not just the climate, but earthquake and volcanic activity. In fact, today we have low KP indices right now, which have resulted possibly into this recent earthquake that we had today in the northwestern part of North America and Canada. That's right, in Canada, 6.5. Between Alaska and Oregon, basically right smack dab in the middle, but they had a 6.5 earthquake today. We've had lower solar activity for quite some time. And solar wind speeds come in this low at 296.6 kilometers per second. Well, that will only create more problems in the jet stream. If anybody follows Earth Null and goes over and checks out how the jet stream looks from time to time, well, you might wonder why you see such a wavy jet stream, and that has a little bit to do with the fact that the weaker the solar wind, the wavier and the crazier we see things happen in our jet stream. Give me 1 second here. Earth. There we go. Just want to pull this up real quick for you guys. I want to show you. We're going to switch over here just a quick second. But yeah, so space weather remains active, but in a quiet way. Like it's not, we're not, on all four cylinders when it comes to a solar maximum or anywhere near that, actually. So, all right, let's take a look over at Earth Null. Since we're talking about low solar wind speeds, let's take a look at what this actually causes. And look at the jet stream here across the North America. Obviously, the jet stream hangs out higher during the summer months. But the waves, the up and down, the craziness, especially over here, the dip down here, which usually means we have some possible blocking going on. But the way this is wavy and out of control has in part to do with the fact that we are dealing with low solar wind speeds. Now, we can still make out the circular motion of the jet stream going around the top of the northern hemisphere. But right here it breaks off, it comes way up and then comes back down, and just all kinds of craziness. Had we have had normal solar wind speeds, and normal is between 380 and 420 kilometers per second. That's moderate. That's when you start seeing things strengthen up a little bit. If you're consistently solar wind speeds are strengthened like that, you're going to see a much straighter circular motion here. But we all know that the magnetosphere has weakened over the past several years of this particular solar cycle. And we are starting to see the results left and right when you talk about cosmic radiation, aka highly charged particles, interacting with particulates already in the atmosphere, water vapor. And we've seen, just July 21st, this year, China received a year's worth of rain in 28 hours. That's never happened. That's a once in a 1,000-year event. And what's possible? How's that going to even happen? You guessed it, cosmic radiation, highly charged particles. They are what is the steroids for the water droplet, water vapor. So imagine a water droplet that is interacting with a highly charged particle that will magnify this tiny little water droplet, say by 50. And the more of these highly charged particles that we have in our atmosphere, the more steroids this basically is for the water vapor, the water droplet. So therefore, we see a large abundance of precipitation falling from the sky, and it has nothing to do with rising temps, because obviously that's not the case, right? There's our UAH. I predicted a 0.39 Celsius above baseline. And we are looking at a 0.17 degrees above baseline. That's unchanged, basically, from last month. Last month was a 0.20. This month is a 0.17. That's very small, but it is no gain. And are we seeing a plateau situation where the temperatures stay here and then we see another drop, possibly, coming up in the winter months? And some of you are probably like, where are you getting that from? What makes you believe that just because the northern hemisphere is going into winter, that these temperatures globally will continue to drop? And it's simple. La Nina is going to be the main reason why we continue to see temperatures drop. In fact, we could see below baseline on the monthly temperatures by as early as the October 1st update, or even as late as the November 1st. But either way, I do believe we will see temperatures globally trending in the below baseline numbers here, based on where we are in solar cycle, based on what's happening in our oceans, based on what's happening with the ice growth in both poles and the maintaining of ice growth in the Arctic during the summer months. And now we shift gears into fall and winter as we will see more growth from the northern part. As usually when spring happens and summer happens, that's where you have melt. And people like to overhype when anything melts, period, and want to blame human-caused climate change. And that's just simply not the case. All right, so let's one more look at the sunspots, because I think they're really big in a way, but like this one right here, that's bigger than Earth, but on the scale of things. But these are not directly facing Earth. Remember, Earth is here in the center of the sun, okay? And we won't see sunspots directly in the equatorial region of this until the end of this current solar cycle 25, which is nowhere until around 2028, 2029, before we start solar cycle 26. So right now, it's okay to see them that big, that far south and that far north. All right, so we had a confirmed tornado hit in New Jersey. It hit their largest dairy farm, devastated by an F3 tornado in Mullica Hill. The National Weather Service in Mount Holly, New Jersey, has conducted several storm surveys for damage on storms from Wednesday, September 1st, associated with the remnants of Ida, and confirmed that 7 tornadoes, 1 EF3, 2 EF2s, and 3 EF1s, and 1 EF0, all touched down in New Jersey and eastern Pennsylvania. Surveys concluded that Mullica Hill was hit by an F3 tornado with estimated wind gusts of 150 miles per hour. They are really latching on to these pictures. I was watching some mainstream news earlier today just to kind of see what they're saying about this. And they're calling this, of course, they're blaming this all on climate change. But if you look at the numbers on tornadoes this year, you'll see that we are below average on tornadoes as far as touchdowns and whatnots. Not downplaying the damage that we've had or the death that we've had. Not downplaying that. I'm just saying those numbers are still down. So this tornado in New Jersey was rare, but it happens from time to time. We get these rare storms happening, and again, our jet stream is far north. So it is not impossible to see some of these tornadic activities happening this far north when you have the jet stream up this far north. And plus, this was all stemming from Hurricane Ida. So again, mainstream media wants to tell you that this was because of climate change, because climate change made this worse. Wait till I show you the numbers on climate change, by the way, how extreme the hurricanes have been. I can't wait to show you that. Let's move on real quick. Port Fourchon. Speaking of Ida, tonight's stories seem to be raveling around Ida, but a major oil and gas hub still in recovery phase after a direct hit by Ida, causing gas prices to rise in the United States. I noticed a 10-cent rise here in upstate New York. The thing about this, folks, and reading this article, the power is still down in this area. About 95% of oil production is shut down right now, and 83% of our natural gas production is also shut down in the Gulf. Power is not expected to be on for weeks in these areas. So if we're struggling to get the power back on for weeks, how long will these oil rigs and natural gas operations stay closed? How much damage has affected these? And it's kind of concerning right now, folks, where we are right now with this incoming grand solar minimum. We are in the middle of a pandemic that has crippled the economy. There are many, many, many small businesses who have lost to this virus. Or I should say lawmakers and policies have created a huge gap in every hometown here in the United States. Your favorite bar closed, one of your favorite diners closed, one of the hair salons that you used to go to closed, A car wash is closed. Okay? Now we have a surge in cases once again, right before America goes back to school. And then this story here, which affects our energy sector, is to raise the prospect of higher gas prices and higher energy costs. As we are approaching a possible historic winter, according to the Old Farmer's Almanac, we are going to see some very, very cold conditions that will prolong this winter. So expect higher energy costs for the reasons of demand. Now expect higher gas prices for several weeks because the power is still out here in the South. Also, unemployment benefits run out for 9.2 million people. So you have that to deal with. Folks, this is the kind of stuff that when you follow a channel like us, Grand Solar Minimum, and we talk about solar cycles and natural climate change, we don't get to talk about what happens during these GSMs. If you look back in history, especially during the Chinese dynasties, a lot of their falls came during Grand Solar Minimums. And you're thinking to yourself, well, what does this got to do with the state of affairs for this world right now? Well, here's where I'm going with this. These grand solar minimums, these decades of lower solar activity that create below average temperatures across the globe and extreme weather events, they also cause crop loss. And if you're not ready for it, it could be devastating. And we are seeing that already happening since 2017. It's really been on a more of an uptick where we are starting to hear more and more about crop losses in areas and how much longer it's going to take them to recover. So on top of the growing crop loss problem that we have, I mean, take for example right now in Minnesota, millennial farmer. Check him out. His entire fields are not done, but he's got quite a bit of crop damage up there. Okay, last year he had a great season, had a great harvest. This year, not so much. The year before last, had a terrible season, a lower yield because we had, and the one thing he kept saying 3 years ago, this is when I started following him, most of his videos, I've never seen this kind of water out here before. I've never seen this much flood over here before. I've never seen it like this before. I've never seen it like that before. So when we tell you that we are living in a once-in-a-lifetime event, a multi-generational event, proof like that, listen, farmers tell the truth. Our friend Matt Bros, Jesse from Wisconsin, those guys will tell you. And when they start talking about weather and they say things like this, you pay attention. And it's not coincidental about climate change. And people will say, well, Jake, how do you explain the CO2 rise? How sudden it was from 1850 and beyond? Well, think about it, folks. Since 1850, our ability to measure anything in the atmosphere has gone up each decade, and especially a huge technology boom in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. So we were able to fine-tune these measurement readings each decade. Therefore, what I'm saying is that the ice cores give us a general feel of where we could have been, give or take 100 to 200 parts per million. It's very possible. It's very possible. We don't have accurate numbers for ice core data when it comes to CO2 in the atmosphere. So during the period of time where it was in the medieval Roman periods and it was 272 parts per million, that might be inaccurate. It might have been 2,700 parts per million. Point being taken, I'm saying, is that you see the sudden spike in CO2 readings because we have better equipment to be able to read this stuff. And it looks bad against the old empirical data because they're not using the same sensors that we're using in 2021 that they were using in 1970. So, again, these people hide behind and deceive through their own tools, but don't explain to you on why the sudden spike in CO2 when it has nothing to do with anything industrial. In fact, for 30 years now, CO2 continues to rise according to NOAA and others at a record rate. And all this awareness for climate change and not anywhere close to dropping CO2. It continues to rise. And it's because it has nothing to do with the humans. The CO2 that you see in those numbers are dictated by natural causes. Warming of the oceans releases the most CO2, and the sun warms the ocean and other complex systems that we have, oscillations in the oceans. But with the grand solar minimum, we will continue to have challenges, not just in gas prices and energy prices, but these events are going to affect crops, and what is going to affect that is going to affect our food. Has anybody seen pictures of North Korea's leader lately? He's pretty skinny, and he didn't get put on Jenny Craig. I promise you that. They're starving over there. He's over there talking about climate change is making it hard on my country to survive. He doesn't understand it's not climate change in the sense that the media wants to portray it in, but the sun is doing something that it does every 200 years or so, and again, look it up for yourself. It changes. Dynasties go down, they fall. Crop failures turn into famine. You say, well, Jake, we're way more advanced than we were during the modern minimum. Absolutely, but we have more mouths to feed now than we did in the modern minimum. How much more people do we have existing now that we have to feed now compared to what we had during the modern minimum? All these things tie into each other. The media wants to scare you and say, well, we got to stop driving cars and you got to stop using fossil fuels, so you're not going to be warm in the winter anymore. You're going to pay through the roof for your energy bills to stay warm like you were when you use natural gas. But they're trying to scare you and try to say that this is all you. And in the same breath, they'll tell you that record-breaking temperatures. And that's not the case. Ida was not in record-breaking waters. Ida was in average Gulf temperatures. Between 85 and 87 degrees is what the average water temperature is in the Gulf of Mexico near New Orleans. And that's where it was when it made landfall. Mainstream media told you that it was record-breaking and it was so hot. It fueled the storm. It did fuel the storm. That's right. The warmer waters did fuel that storm. Because in the rest of the Gulf, in the central Gulf, and the southern part of the Gulf, 82 degrees, 83 degrees was the temperature readings. Okay? So the waters were obviously about 5 degrees cooler than what they were near the coast. And then a lot of you, well, that's man-made. It's near the coast. It's urban heating, man-made. Whatever it is, the way the Gulf is flowing right now, it's still average temperatures. But we are going to start seeing some bad effects from some of these storms. And you're going to see the media hijack it, try to blame you, that it's burning fossil fuels is what's causing this. And you're going to see what happens when you shut off the ability to freely purchase oil and gas. And we're about to see that here in the next few weeks. And you're going to see the economy take a little tumble as well. It's going to hurt you at the pump. It's going to hurt you at the grocery store. It's going to hurt. It's going to affect us all in the next coming weeks. So to hear that the price or the power is not back yet, and it could take weeks, is concerning. Because we've only seen a 10-cent jump in a week. What's it going to be in 2 weeks? 3 weeks? Maybe by 4 weeks the power will be back on. But how far behind are we going to be on our supply by 4 weeks? Let's hope that they figure out a solution to this very soon. More flooding likely in Ida-ravaged Northeast this week. For Tuesday into Wednesday, mainly Wednesday evening for upstate Capital Region New York. Heavy rain for us. That's for me and Mari. We're up here in the upstate area. We haven't had a good drenching rain in a while, but New York City, and let me speak quickly on that because we didn't do a show or broadcast and report that news, but I'll tell you something. The problem in New York City, folks, is the problem that we have all over in New York, and that is infrastructure. And I'm talking about our sewage lines. They're old. They can't handle these once in 400, 500-year, 1,000-year storms. A lot of these systems were installed in the late 1800s. You go to Buffalo, New York, you've got manhole covers with dates of 1846 on them. Sewage grates with dates of the 1890s So if the outside sewage grates are not getting replaced, you can only imagine the interior. And the roads are horrible in Buffalo. That's how I know they haven't done any road work or dug anything up, because their roads are awful. So the infrastructure I know in Buffalo is pretty bad. The infrastructure in most of New York is outdated. During 2017, we had a lot of cold, really, really cold actually, through December into early January. And then it warmed up to 60 degrees, causing ice jam floods in Buffalo. Not only did it cause ice jam floods on the water in the rivers and the creeks, but people living near water systems like the rivers and the creeks, their sewage was backed up. The basements were treading water. Water was coming up from your basement drains. And a good 3 to 5 inches of rain or water was accumulated in almost everyone's basement within hours. And that was just from an ice jam flood. So when I saw Ida bring all that precipitation through the southern part of New York, we had Henri that came through and dropped a lot of rain. So a lot of New York City and southern parts of New York and northeastern Pennsylvania, their systems were still overwhelmed. And then we get another one. Okay, so if we're at the very beginning of a grand solar minimum, and I tell you that the frequency and the intensity of these events will continue to happen more frequently down the road, and we're already seeing multiple events in the Northeast where we get 4 to 8 inches of rain in one sitting, and then we have this horrific flooding in New York City, killing 50 people from these floods. I mean, Ida lost, I think, 4 in the south from the initial storm. The storm made landfall with 150-mile-an-hour winds, and we lost maybe 4 people in the south. And then we get up here, and it's a rain event, and it plugs up the systems here. I mean, some of the video for this was biblical, some of the flooding. So we definitely need to see the infrastructure improved in parts here in the Northeast, because now I'm starting to understand why folks are concerned about some people like us who live up this far up north, when these sewage systems are not built to handle 8 to 12 inches of rain in less than 8 hours. They're not built like that up here. And it caused a major problem across New York City. And it should be alerting, the government to do something about these infrastructure issues across the country. All these old cities, Cleveland, Ohio, Cincinnati, all of them need upgrades. Pittsburgh. It's not just here in New York. But a lot of the stuff here in the north is not suitable to handle what we had from Ida. So what's the purpose of this channel? It's to prepare, to understand what's happening is natural, but it's also going to create challenges for mankind. And getting through this is going to be based on how smart we are, not paying more in taxes for food or gas or energy. That's not going to prepare us for these challenges. It's good to be conscious of the planet, recycle and burn cleaner fuel and make sure it's good for the environment. That's one thing. But there is a way to get through what we're going through right now without turning our backs on fossil fuels and all technology that points towards fossil fuels. This is totally absurd. When you see the actual contribution to the atmosphere of man's emissions, to the CO2 that's in the atmosphere now, 420 parts per million, 0.0004% is from man. The rest is from CO2 emitting from our oceans, volcanic eruptions, high concentrated amounts of CO2 from the earth when we have a fissure breaking open, forest fires, its own CO2. Folks, I can go on and on about these natural events, and you can argue with me about these forest fires are caused by man-made climate change. It's so hot in the droughts, blah, blah, blah. We are still way lower when it comes to burn acreage compared to where we were in the 30s. Temperatures, same thing. The temperatures were much, much, much higher in the 1930s through the 40s than they are right now. We burned way more acres. We had hotter days. We had drier conditions. And nobody back then was blaming man for global warming. People knew the sun did things to this planet on a normal basis and understood that you have to adapt to the challenges. The biggest mistake we could make is getting rid of fossil fuels right before a 3-decade or maybe even 4-decade long period of cooling that we are about to embark. We are now entering a phase where we have been warming for the past 18 years, slightly, very, very slightly, and now that phase is shifting away and declining into a cooling phase. I'm not saying ice age, folks. I'm just stating the facts, what I've learned. And what I'm seeing right now, what we're facing here in the upcoming future, what's being forecast, and what's came true so far, it definitely does appear that we are starting a very beginning of a cooling trend. And the science behind why we're having all this extreme weather makes sense when you talk about cosmic radiation, highly charged particles. When you ask someone who follows AGW, they don't give you stats, they don't give you graphs, they don't tell you what water vapor droplets do, this and that. They don't tell you about that. They just say, well, it's human activities that's causing the extreme. No, they're hijacking the effects, what's happening right now with our sun. True story. Oh, by the way, not to take away all the hype, but I'm going to. Hurricane Larry, yeah, nothing to worry about. Big fat nothing burger here, folks. Impressive. Large swells, yes. Coastal flooding during high tide, yes. Nothing life-threatening, nothing major. Just be aware, stay out of the water during the weekend, later part of the week here in the Atlantic. You see this thing's way far away from us. Not going to affect here in the United States. Rough seas at best. Hurricane Ida exposed the dire straits of infrastructure here in America. We just talked about that. This article also appeared on Climate Change Dispatch. Highly recommend this website. Folks, this has nothing to do, again, they are showing you the reason why things went so crazy in New York. It had nothing to do with the actual flooding itself. It was the lack of infrastructure updates, the lack of ability for these infrastructure to be able to handle such a flooding event. And I encourage you to read up on the emergency that's really exposed here is how America does need an investment on its infrastructure program, its sewer lines, its water lines, everything. Everything needs an overhaul. I'm pretty sure everybody here that's watching right now would be able to tell me their hometown has a few roads, maybe some water issues, maybe there's always a water main break, maybe there's sewage issues. I'm almost positive that we are well overdue for an upgrade to our infrastructures. Was Ida really caused by climate change? Well, absolutely not. We showed you what happened, and this is what grinds my gears, okay, aka Peter Griffith. But what grinds my gears is this right here. We keep hearing about global warming and oh man, so much strong hurricanes, blah blah blah. Well, here, let's take a look. Looks like 1987 we had seven hurricanes made landfall. But what about the years before? 2 to 4? A blip here, a blip here, a blip here, and a blip here. But for the most part, 2 to 4 hurricanes is average. And the one year we got 7, 3 above average. And then after that, 5. That was the peak. So we're not seeing the trend going up. All right, that's just landfall for hurricanes, folks. 4 or 5. Ida is the first landfall hurricane of 2021. Henri was downgraded before it made landfall. Now you want to see how many strong hurricanes have made landfall between 1900 and 2020? Ooh. Now put one in the books for 21. We're tied with 20 already. Okay. But that's where the average is. Between 1 and 2 major hurricanes make landfall on a yearly basis. Shocking. But yet, if you watch the MSN, they will show you footage from Hurricane Ida of destruction and death and just, all that, just this climate change's fault. But yet, this is the first major hurricane landfall of 2021. And what I have to show you here in a bit, it may be the only one as we continue to see waters cool as we move forward into September and October. The peak activity usually picks up right around late August through late September. Right now, it is relatively calm, if you ask me, and I'll show you here in the GFS Outlook. But yeah, when you talk to folks about climate change and they want to tell you how extreme the storms are right now, could you see Ida? Look how extreme that was. And you look at that person and say, really? Was it that extreme? Show them this graph. Go to climatechangedispatch.com. Look up the story, was Hurricane Ida really caused by climate change? And show them this graph of major hurricane landfalls of a Category 3 or higher in the last 120 years. You will tell them that we've already had one of two average major hurricanes that make landfall. We've had one of possibly two that we get. And really, if you look at the past, we had more years with two hurricane landfalls before the so-called period right here. 1990 moving forward is where they basically said, oh yeah, man is causing global warming. Before then, they weren't blaming man for this. So the period of time that they weren't blaming man for climate change, look at how many years we had two major hurricane landings, and then 2 years we had three. Compared to now, I guess they want to say, well, look what we had here. We had 3 1 year and 4 1 year and 2 1 year and then what? 2 this year. So total, we've had, let's say, 2, 5, 9, 10. All right, 10 hurricanes between a 30-year period. 10 that were over average. And then here, before that period, we had 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. And then we had a bunch of years at 1. So clearly more years we had 2 hurricanes, major landfalls in 1 year versus where we're at right now. They don't happen as frequently as they used to. Even though we've seen a couple of years with some strong storms, but those are going to happen. They've happened before, just like it did back in 1911, 1912. Not much going on then, but 1908, 1909, 1911. Okay, it happens. It's natural. It's reoccurring. It's a cycle. Again, temperature is still hovering just above baseline. Other than what we were talking about tonight, this is the only threat we have in the Gulf. This was the one where I was watching for the middle of the month. It is already the 6th, and we don't have much of a chance of formation. 30% chance is not a concern for me. This is great news, folks. I'm not by any means discouraged that we don't have a big hurricane to report on. This helps because the South is hurting right now. Louisiana, parts of Mississippi, parts of Tennessee have flooded out this year. Parts of Kentucky has flooded out this year. North Carolina, Louisiana, Mississippi, Texas, parts of Florida. Now we see New Jersey, New York City, parts of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Ohio. We've seen enough flooding and damage over the last several weeks. We need to catch our breath. And thankfully right now, Larry is going to continue to move to the north and off into behind us towards our friends in the UK. And hopefully by the time it gets to the UK, it is nothing more than just a low pressure system. Again, the one system in the Gulf doesn't even have much confidence that it'll stay organized long enough. We do have some heat advisories to watch out here for most of Montana. Red flag fire warning. And a lot of dry conditions here in the mountain regions. Unfortunately, we're still dealing with fires burning here in the west and the northwest. But listen, again, we're still below the horrible numbers of forest fires that we were at in the 1930s. we're talking about hundreds of thousands of acres compared to millions, 30 million acres being burnt in 1 year. I don't even think we're over 5 million acres burnt in the United States this year. Now, we have seen a lot of fire damage in Canada. As you know, the smoke has affected most of us here in the Northern Plains, Great Lakes, and the Northeast with the fire smoke in the atmosphere. But nonetheless, even though we are seeing it all over the news, if you go back and look up history, you'll find that we are still well below what we were when we had those horrible fires in the 1930s and so forth. So watch out for red flag warnings across the Northwest, and really just overall usual weather happening here across the lower 48. I will say this, the GFS temperature map wants to hang on to summer for most of us for another 2 weeks. But folks in the Great Lakes and in the Northeast and the Northern Great Plains states will start to see slightly cooler conditions. Let's check out precipitation. We have that system moving through for Wednesday, bringing lots of rain to the Northeast. Be aware, once again, parts of New York will get hit with this again. More heavy rain from northeastern Pennsylvania as this goes through on Thursday. Dries out a little bit. High pressure, a cold front will be affecting the region after that. And then just really quiet weather across much of the United States. Rain heading into the northern plain states and Minnesota and the Canadian border. And that's it. High pressure dominating most of the country. Look at that on Sunday, September 12th. This is a gift from the football gods. If you're a football fan, this is the NFL kickoff weekend. So check out that. Pretty much nice weather unless you live in Cleveland and they play in Kansas City. Buffalo, you're going to have rain for your kickoff if you're playing in Buffalo. If not, everyone looks to have a pretty good day on Sunday, September 12th. That dry conditions will continue into Monday, September 13th. Now, we do see a disturbance in the Gulf and across the Ohio Valley on the 14th. And this, after this, is just too far to really trust. But even later into the month of September, GFS is not suggesting that there is a little swath of cold in Canada that was not there earlier today. So the colder air is starting to flirt with the Canadian-U.S. border by September 18th. We will see what the update is on the temperatures for that. Very interesting to see, folks. Some snow showers across Alberta and BC as well in late part of September and also in the eastern parts of Canada. But right now, the GFS is not suggesting any hurricane activity, but the GFS is suggesting to parts of Wyoming and Colorado by September 21st, possible its chance for its first wet snowflakes in front of a huge low-pressure system that's going to dominate the majority of the country and make its way through the Midwest into the Northeast by the end of the month. So a big storm on tap, but what does this mean for our temperatures? Right now, things are pretty summery, right? If you live in the lower 48, you're not convinced that fall is on the way for the most part. All right, let's take a look through our next several days of temperatures, especially after the 14th. High temperatures tomorrow, pretty nice. Although my heart does go out for the folks in Louisiana, temperatures still in the upper 90s. No power yet restored for those folks. Comfortable across the northern plains and the Northeast, 70s. Across the Ohio Valley, 70s. 70s in the Great Lakes, 60s across western New York, western Pennsylvania, eastern Ohio. Wow. Across parts of Kentucky as well. Heating up in the south just nicely. There's that cold front dipping all the way far south. Temperatures getting low in the 40s and 50s in parts of the northern parts of the Great Lakes and the Northeast. But some are trying to hang on here for much of Central America and Central North America, I should say. But the Ohio Valley and Northeast will see some really fall-like temperatures here by September 10th. Daytime highs only reaching the lower 70s, heating up across the Central Plains once again on the 11th. Temperatures stay hot in Oklahoma and Texas. Finally, some hot weather for you guys in Texas. I know you've been complaining of the lack of hundreds. I don't know if you're really complaining. But then we start to see things change a little bit. A cold front coming in from Canada brings things cooler in the northern plain states, the Great Lakes, and the Northeast. Check these lows out. Here's the daytime highs hugging the Great Lakes. You're looking at 60s and 70s, folks. The northern plain states, 50s and 60s in the northern parts of Minnesota. This is on September 13th. Still pretty hot across Central America, Central United States, plain states, I should say. Oklahoma, Missouri, Louisiana, Texas, parts of the Southeast staying pretty hot. But Northeast, Ohio Valley, Great Lakes, the northern plain states are starting to see a lot cooler temperatures moving in here as we go through September. And then one more push for some really warm weather here towards the end of September, around the 17th and 18th, where it will feel like summer for a couple of us here. The northern plain states and the Great Lakes area will stay average, if not below average. And then that cold front from Canada, look at all these 30s coming down. By the 18th, we'll push this warmth further south by the 19th. Daytime highs in the upper 50s for parts in North Country of New York. Also parts of Nebraska. Matt, we're looking at 58 degrees for a high for you on September 19th. Now, I am not seeing anything yet for frost except for Wyoming and Colorado. That's the good news. That we're not having any widespread frost even in late September. Thank the Lord, right? Maybe we can get in a decent harvest. But I'm telling you, for my friends like Matt, there was a lot of dry days this year, and the temperatures took a while to get going up there. So, it'll be an interesting harvest this year. It'll also be interesting to see how bad the weather gets by October when it comes to working in the fields. Will we continue to see this large amount of moisture and record amounts of precipitation? I say yeah. In fact, let's go check out where we are right now on the La Nina side of things before we take off. El Nino region right now, 3-4, is at a negative 0.148. So we got to be at a negative 0.5 or lower for a consecutive time. But as you see, temperatures have steadily climbed down, and La Nina is on a 70% chance of happening for this upcoming winter. And this gives me a moment here, folks. I'd like to wish well a great friend of ours, David, overseas. He is currently hospitalized with a broken bone and is getting some tests done. We wish him a speedy recovery and nothing but well wishes to him and his family across the pond. We're thinking of you. Talking about ocean temperatures made me think about Dave, so I wanted to mention that real quick. Hoping for a speedy recovery out there. And also, check out our YouTube. If you're not a subscriber, subscribe to us. If you are a subscriber and you want to promote our channel more, check out our Teespring store. We got hoodies, t-shirts, coffee mugs, you name it. Different designs. So much more in store. Just give it a check. It's one of the best ways to support this channel. We do appreciate our paid subscribers and our donations that we get. Those are also very much appreciated. But this is a good cause. You get something in return. You get a nice sweatshirt and someone asks you, hey, what's GSM? And then, gee, how much time do you have? Because it really does it's a conversation to have with someone if you've got a good 10, 15, 20 minutes or more. But anyway, this is a great conversation piece, icebreaker. Check out our merch store here on our YouTube channel. That's going to do it for us tonight on the Grand Solar Minimum channel. Be sure to tune in tomorrow for our next update on Grand Solar Minimum news, such as weather, climate, space weather news as well. And if we have any breaking news, Grand Solar Minimum channel will be on it. I want to say hello to my friends out there tonight. Pizza Hut, good to see you. My friend Richard Davidson from New Mexico, hello. Knife Collector, long time. I haven't said hello to you guys. I sure miss you out there. Arnold Schmidt, good to see you as well. Matthew McDonald, hello there. Laura, Ira, good to have you on as well. Caleb, and many, many others out here who are new to the channel making comments. Where's Wendy? Shirley Davis, good to see you as well. And as always, hello to my lovely wife, Mari. Thank you very much for keeping everyone in check and keeping this channel running as smooth as possible. All right, guys, we hope everyone has a great evening, and we will talk soon. Take care.
Do you like this show? Give us a thumbs up. Want to support us more? Share to your favorite social media platform, buy a t-shirt, or become a Patreon. All links are in the description below.